Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for clicking on this Rank the Movies video. We are past talking about kids' movies that I really enjoyed. We got a bunch of those out of the way. So if you're a person who's been sitting there watching these videos going, man, what is he going to talk about kids' movies? That's done. Just look it back, and you can see some. We're starting franchise month. Right now, I'm going to talk about 5 different franchises, not 10. I just want to make sure 5, I just did both hands. 5 different franchises, one each week. It ranges the gambit from a family franchise. We're going to have a horror franchise, an adult franchise, an action franchise, and another kids franchise. But they're great franchises, and I think I'm saying the word franchise way too much for any video. So let's dive right into the first one. So the first one I'm going to talk about, which is the Shrek movie franchise. Now I know this one stems into a lot of other things. You have like Shrek the Halls. There's Shrek 3D, which was a ride, but it was a movie that had all the voice actors. You have the Halloween, Shrek Halloween. I honestly don't know what it's called. I'm not going to talk about those. Not because they're not part of this, but because I'm only going to talk about the movies. This will be with one of the other franchises I talk about later on down the line. I'm just going to talk about the theatrically released movies. Because it gets too big once you start ruling out other things. So, Shrek. It's a great franchise. If for nothing else, it is held up on the strength of the first movie. Truly, that is, what is holding this franchise up. It's what makes it worth watching. It is that first initial movie, the original Shrek, which I did go see in theaters. It was weird. I think I went by myself. And then my dad and my brother went to go see it after. Like, this was like a week after or a couple of weeks after. They decided to go see Shrek, but I had already seen it, so I got to go see a different movie. So I went and saw Dr. Dolittle 2, because this was in my I love everything Eddie Murphy does phase. So I went to go see Dr. Dolittle 2 while they watched Shrek, which was fine. I wanted to see Dr. Dolittle 2 anyways. I do enjoy the first Dr. Dolittle. The second one's not bad. Maybe sometime down the line I'll do a video on those. But right now we're talking Shrek! Of course, this is the fairy tale movie where Mike Myers voices Shrek, who is an ogre. He lives in a swamp and he just wants to be left alone. But of course, that isn't what happens. Shrek meets Donkey, who is a talking donkey who is trying to be sold because Lord Farquaad, the ruler of this area, which doesn't have a name, the only realm that gets a name is in the sequels. One moment. Doing it for the content. Thank you, Brian Zane. Anyways, Shrek, Lord Farquaad rules the area, and he wants all the fairy tale creatures rounded up because he is looking for something very specific. Townspeople try to take Shrek in, but Shrek is a giant ogre who basically says, go screw off, and runs them away. He meets Donkey, who escapes being sold because he has Tinkerbell fall on him, and he begins to fly. Shrek and Donkey then go to see Lord Farquaad about how he can get his swamp back, because unfortunately when he returns home, he finds out all the fairy tale creatures Farquaad has been rounding up have been dumped in his swamp. He just wants it back. He just wants his swamp. He wants his lovely swamp. So he goes to see Lord Farquaad, who we find out is a very short-statured man. And Farquaad wanted the magic mirror, mirror on the wall, because he wanted to find a princess. Because he doesn't want to be a lord anymore. He wants to be a king. But he has to marry a princess to become a king. So the mirror gives him the options of Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, and Princess Fiona, who is trapped in a tower guarded by a dragon. So he sends Shrek and Donkey to go rescue Princess Fiona in exchange for the swamp. They rescue Fiona, the dragon falls in love with Donkey, and Shrek and Fiona come together as they travel back to Duquad. Duquad, that's his kingdom. His kingdom is Duquad. I'm pronouncing it poorly. I know it. I'm saying it, and I'm like, no, I'm right, and that's, I think I have the right letters. but I know I'm saying it wrong. So they're taking him, Duloc. I didn't even have the right letters. Damn, I'm dumb right now. So they're taking Fiona back to Duloc, and Shrek and Fiona are bonding. But Fiona has a secret. During the day, she is a beautiful princess. At night, she's an ogre princess. Because she's still a princess. Like, the transformation doesn't take away her being a princess. She's a human or an ogre, but she's still a princess. So she doesn't want Shrek to see her hideous ogre form, so they have to hide every night. She has to hide every night from them. They finally get to Duloc, but they have to hide because it's going to be nightfall before they get there. Donkey finds out about Fiona's transformation, and she begins to say how hideous she is. Shrek overhears it, but doesn't catch the beginning of it, so he only hears, the hideous ogre, and believes it's him. So he travels ahead, gets Lord Farquaad, and Princess Fiona is whisked away to Duloc for her magical wedding, where you find out that Shrek realizes that Fiona actually loves him, and so he's got to go save the day with Donkey and Dragon, because Dragon has shown back up, and they do, and Lord Farquaad gets eaten, and everyone lives happily ever after, as Fiona's true form is that of the ogre, because she took the form of True Love's kiss, and Shrek is the true love. It's a great movie. It is one. It's not in my top 100 favorite movies, but it's in my top 200. It drags the rest of the franchise with it, but it is a great movie. It's a classic movie. It is so much fun. Don't play the Shrek drinking game. I did that once, and every time they say Farquaad, you're supposed to drink, and they say Farquaad a damn lot in this movie. But it's a great movie. I love Shrek. It is such a classic. And because it did so well, it made sense that a sequel was inevitably going to come out. So a few years later, Shrek 2 hit the screens. And people went to go see it, as Shrek and Fiona and Donkey travel to Far, Far Away, which is where Fiona's parents live, is where their kingdom is, in Far, Far Away. And you find out that the king is actually the Frog Prince, who was turned into a human by the fairy godmother, who actually wanted her son, Prince Charming, to become the new king of Far, Far Away by marrying Princess Fiona, but unfortunately Charming is too late. Princess Fiona is gone, but the wolf is there. The big bad wolf is there. It is found out that the king... I'm jumping ahead one movie. But yeah, the king is not happy that Fiona is an ogre and that Shrek is an ogre, and Shrek believes that because they are ogres, Fiona will eventually realize that she shouldn't be with Shrek and that she should be with a human so she can look beautiful and be human. So he goes out on an adventure with Donkey where they run into Puss in Boots, voiced by Antonio Banderas, who is a hitman who is sent to stop Shrek and Donkey, but ends up he ends up joining them. They end up getting a potion that will turn both Shrek and Fiona into beautiful versions of themselves, which Donkey also drinks, and they can stay that way forever as long as Shrek kisses Fiona before a certain time period, otherwise it'll wear off. So Shrek races back, and you see that he's now a beautiful human, and Donkey's a steed, and you never see what happens to Dragon. Like, Donkey and Dragon are together, and, he turned into a beautiful steed. You never see what Dragon turns into, which I think is an oversight of this movie, because I would love just a quick cutaway to show what Dragon became while Donkey was the steed. They get to the castle, but unfortunately, oh no, Shrek, nobody knows who Shrek doesn't look like Shrek, so he gets thrown out. Prince Charming stands in for Shrek, saying that happened, saying that this is his new form and that they need to have their official wedding and that he'll become king. At the wedding, Shrek eventually breaks out with the help of his other fairy tale creatures, storms the wedding, and him and Fiona are returned to their ogre form. And Prince Charming is defeated and the fairy godmother is killed, who is also, again, Prince Charming's mother. It's not a bad movie. It's a pretty entertaining film. Shrek 2 is a good film. This led, of course, again, we gotta have a trilogy, because trilogies are great. So Shrek the Third came out a few years later, And in this one, the king is dying, and therefore Shrek is going to become king of Far, Far Away. He does not like this, so he ventures out to find a different heir in Arthur. King Arthur. And they have misadventures. It's not a great film. Prince Charming is the villain, which it is true. This is a decent, like, as far as the setup and payoff, the trilogy works, because it does carry over. Prince Charming is still the villain of the third movie, and it's about him being defeated. Also, Shrek and Donkey, or Puss in Boots and Donkey, trade voice actors, which, you know, ha 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 ha, and they're trying to get Arthur, who's voiced by Justin Timberlake, back to Far, Far Away so he can be king. It's not a great movie. It's fine. It's just not as good as the first two, and that's the problem. It doesn't match up to them, and when you have a strong first movie and a pretty good second movie, it's hard. It's hard to make the third movie hit the same notes and make the same impact that the first two did. But they pressed on and decided to make another Shrek movie with Shrek Forever After. This would be the final entry of the Shrek franchise as of today for theatrical movies. There was originally plans to do two trilogies, Shrek, Shrek 2, and Shrek 3, and then 4, 5, and 6, with 5 and 6 being one story told over two movies, which was a huge thing back in the early 2000s when these movies were made, to try to do that split movie, because like The Matrix did it. I think they were the only ones who like wanted to do it and actually succeeded in doing it, other than like Back to the Future, but that's, now we're talking the 80s, early 90s. Because I know Spider-Man, they wanted to do one of those with the Sam Raimi movies. Shrek wanted to do it because they saw how much money Matrix made for shooting two movies back to back. It's just not feasible for a lot of films to shoot both of their movies, two sequels back to back. It only works out in very rare occasions. But you get Shrek Forever After. It has nothing to do with Farquaad or Prince Charming, Far, Far Away. It has nothing to do with anything that has been established other than the characters, as Shrek is now a parent to many little ogres because Fiona got pregnant in the previous movie, ogre sex. And now he's, you know, it's his kid's first birthday. They're little troublemakers because they're baby ogres, and he's not happy about it. And he meets Rumpelstiltskin, and Rumpelstiltskin gives him a wish to be a true ogre one day in exchange for one day of his childhood. Of course, Rumpelstiltskin takes the day he was born, therefore Shrek never existed, and you get to see the dystopian future of what it looks like if Shrek was never born. But somehow Rumpelstiltskin is in charge of the kingdom in exchange for helping Fiona escape the castle. But Farquaad still would have been there. Like, he only erased Shrek. And they don't explain how erasing Shrek erases the fairy godmother, Prince Charming, and Lord Farquaad. Like, our three previous villains all still would have existed. Lord Farquaad still would have been searching for a princess, still would have picked Fiona. You can argue that no one would have saved her, and that all the knights would have been killed by dragon. But it's still, like, Farquaad still would have went after her. And who says he wouldn't have gotten her? Like, I just felt like they created a story where they could have brought John Lithgow back to do Farquaad, who was a great character, and a lot of fans loved him. And instead of doing that, they stuck with, like, Rumpelstiltskin still could have been the villain, but you could have had John Lithgow back as well. Like, you could have had Lithgow now playing the king of Far, Far Away, King Farquaad, with Rumpelstiltskin as, like, his devious advisor. You know, there's more power in being the right hand to the king than to actually be the king, and have Rumpelstiltskin do that bit. Because that's still, or same thing with, you know, Prince Charming and the Fairy Godmother. There are ways to tie this movie in to the first three more than it's just the continuing adventures of Shrek. Because the first three are tied in very closely with the plot of this one immediately affects the plot of this one, immediately affects the plot of this one. And then 4 is just there, where you have this dystopian future. And I can get it, if they couldn't get John Lithgow back, you know, that sucks. Or the voice actors who did the Fairy Godmother or Prince Charming, I can't imagine. John Lithgow is the one I would buy. Maybe they couldn't get Lithgow back. Though he did do the voice in other things. He's done Farquaad in other Shrek-related materials. So, I don't know. I just feel like they could have. It's a weird. I hate when movie franchises do that though. If they start playing with time and they start like, oh, if we remove this from the timeline, or we alter this moment, but then they don't look back like at the other movies that they've already done, or the other like a TV show, the other episodes they've already done, and either they just have to say these events still happen the exact way they transpired beforehand, or they just have to ignore the fact that all of these characters who came before would still exist. Like, their existence had nothing to do with Shrek's existence. Their plans and schemes had nothing to do with Shrek to begin with. Yeah, I'm surprised I went on this rant. I did not plan to go on a, why the hell do movies and TV shows ignore things? Because I know I'm rewatching, going way off on a tangent now, I'm rewatching the TV show Eureka, and in their 4th season, they end up screwing with time and everyone ends up with different jobs basically except for the main character, but all the characters that died due to consequences because they were like leaving the show are barely addressed. Like, it's just assumed that these events still transpired exactly the same way, even though all these other events have now changed. Like, it's just weird when they do it. Like, I get it. If you can't get an actor back, it happens. But it doesn't take that long to, like, write a short couple of lines of dialogue just to address it. Just to, like, when Rumpelstiltskin, when they have the scene, because there actually is a scene where Rumpelstiltskin makes the deal with the king and queen to get Fiona, just bring up the fairy godmother, and that, Prince Charming failed. Bring up that, some doofus from Duquad failed. Like, you can do that. It's quick mentioning to the other movies. It doesn't take a ton of time, and it just kind of wraps everything up in a nice bow. Instead of this, which is a very merry, messy kind of thing. I just watched the Blackadder Christmas Carol, and I got Blackadder jokes on my mind. I just dated this video. Anyways, yeah, it's not a great film. It's one, like, honestly, I find myself watching the first and second Shrek more than I find myself watching the third and fourth, just because they're not as strong. They're not as strong, and I feel like the fourth one could have been. Like, they say they went back to form with Rumpelstiltskin and the idea of 4, and I kind of get it. I can kind of see it, but I feel like it would have been perfect. They could have really hit that form if they had brought back John Lithgow as Lord Farquaad, even just for a couple of scenes. He didn't have to be the main antagonist again. I think it just would have been really fun to see Lord Farquaad pop back up, because now you have the ability to allow him to show back up, and maybe have him get eaten by a dragon again. It's that fun, like, inevitably, it still happens. Like, it doesn't matter the timeline. The minute Shrek is introduced, Lord Farquaad gets eaten by a dragon. That could have been a lot of fun. Instead, it's just, you get Rumpelstiltskin, and Rumpelstiltskin wants to rule, and Shrek wants to have his life back, and he's got to have true love's first kiss again with Fiona, because it'll break Rumpelstiltskin's spell, and eventually, so he has got to woo Fiona again. Like, it's all fine. It's all a fine story, and it makes sense. It's just, I think they could have done a little more with tying it in to the first 3 movies. I'm not gonna rank these because I'm pretty sure I'm at a disadvantage because I don't really like 3 because it's not that memorable. But now I've just went on this huge rant about 4, so I don't know which one's my least favorite out of those 2. I mean, clearly 1 and 2 fall in that order. Shrek is the best movie in the series. Shrek 2 is the second best. And now I'm really, like, I've made myself uncertain about how I want to rank the other 2 movies. Because, yeah, Shrek 3 isn't memorable at all. It's kind of just forgettable. There are some memorable things, but that's because they kind of fell on what would inevitably turn out to be kind of shitty days in my life, I had Shrek 3 playing, because it was airing on some network. And I had it playing in the background during what would inevitably turn out to be a pretty shitty day in my life. Not the shittiest day. Not the shittiest. It's a different shitty day. Different level of shitty. But yeah, so I don't even remember. I just remember Shrek 3 was on. I don't remember. I think they were getting Arthur is the scene I was actually watching. And again, this movie is so not memorable. Like, I can remember other events from that day. I can't remember watching Shrek 3 or Shrek the Third. And again, Forever After, not a bad movie. It just could have been better. They could have handled it better. They could have had a stronger script, a stronger idea. Overall, though, watch Shrek and Shrek 2. Those are some really good movies. If you want to watch the other Shrek movies, go ahead. I have them in a 4-pack because that is the easiest way to obtain Shrek and Shrek 2 on Blu-ray. Is just to buy one of the multi-packs with the other movies in them. Yeah, it's just the easiest way. So, I mean, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. I don't know why I'm looking at what the special features are. I never get why, like, so the Shrek 3D thing, which was part of the ride, why was it never included, like, on the Blu-ray releases of the movie, why wasn't it included as a Blu-ray special feature? I just don't quite get it. Like why? Why those, like, specials weren't... Like, because they were all out by the time this was released. This is a fairly newer Shrek Anniversary Edition. And yet, that stuff's not in here. And there's no, like, special features disc that would have them. It's just the 4 movies. Because I'm pretty sure they just stuck the 4 movies that they had already released. But they didn't. They're not. Because I've seen the original release, which was each movie individually in a box. And that one has clips from Shrek the Musical on it. And if you want to hear me talk about Shrek the Musical, there's a video on here. It's one of my movies from the Unwatched shelves, one of the early ones. I do talk about Shrek the Musical. It's not bad. It's a pretty decent musical. I enjoyed it. Anyways, watch the first 2 Shrek movies. Next week, it's going to be a slightly different format, kind of playing with format ideas again for various types of videos. Much like with the Nicolas Cage good or bad format, I'm trying something else to do that same kind of format in a different way. So check that one out. It's going to be on the horror movie franchise I'm covering this month. So I'm going to find out if it's a good, bad, or average franchise. I already know my opinion on it, but I'm going to figure it out, lay out the numbers, all of that. So tune in next week for that, and have a good one. I am Martin Prevost. This is Rank the Movies. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you got a comment, leave one downstairs. Maybe you really like Shrek Forever After. Maybe Shrek the Third is the most memorable movie in the series to you. I don't know who you are, but maybe you're out there and you randomly clicked on this video. If you did, please leave me a comment and let me know. I'm just interested. I'm curious as to why. I just really am. I'm more curious as to why. Like, you can. Like what you like. You know, I really don't care. Sometimes I get curious as to why. Alright, well, I'm Martin Prevost. This is Rank the Movies. Have a good one.